You know, some houses, they look totally normal from the outside, but behind that door, they can hide secrets that are way more terrifying than you could ever imagine. Today, we're going to dive into a case that even world-famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren would call one of their most harrowing. So get ready. This is the story of the Donovan family haunting, a case that really pushed the boundaries of paranormal investigation to the absolute edge. All right, so let's set the scene. We've got the Donovan family, Ted and Ellen, and their kids. They've just moved into a new house in a pretty quiet neighborhood. But for their 19-year-old daughter, Patty, this move was tough. She felt really isolated, didn't have a lot of friends, and was just lonely. And to try and fill that emptiness, Patty made a decision that would change everything. She brought home a Ouija board. Now, I know a lot of people think it's just a game, but if you ask any paranormal expert, they'll tell you it's a dangerous tool. It's basically like opening a door and sending out a direct invitation for, well, whatever's on the other side. So Patty starts using this board every single day, and pretty soon, she makes contact. The entity on the other end says it's the spirit of a 19-year-old boy. When she asks if it'll be her friend, the planchette zips right over to yes. Then it spells out a new word, Boyfriend. This spirit knew exactly what to do. It started manipulating her, telling her how special she was, how beautiful. And for Patty, who felt so alone, this was everything. She actually believed this spirit was her boyfriend. Then one day, she decided to take it a step further. She challenged it. She said, "Come out and show yourself." And the second she uttered those words, the lights in her room just start flickering like crazy. But for the very first time, the planchette on the board didn't move an inch. And believe me, after that day, nothing for the Donovan family was ever the same again. Well, Patty had put out an invitation, and it turns out something accepted. It didn't take long at all before all these strange, really disturbing things started happening to the whole family. At first, it was kind of subtle, but then it just started getting more and more intense. It began with this loud knocking sound coming from deep inside the walls late at night. Then, a family photo just flies off the wall and shatters. One morning, they wake up and there are these deep scratches, almost like claw marks, all down their walls. And then came the smell. A horrible, overpowering stench of sulfur and rotting meat that just filled the entire house. The family tried everything to get rid of that awful smell, but nothing worked. And then, the taps in the house, they started to flow not with water, but with this thick, red liquid that looked exactly like blood. The time for unsettling little disturbances was over. The haunting was now becoming openly hostile. And then we get to March 31st, 1974. This is the night everything goes completely off the rails. The family's just watching TV when the lights start to flicker and the set goes dead. And then a 6-foot-tall, 100-kilogram dresser just lifts off the floor, hovers in midair, and starts to spin violently. I mean, it was total chaos. A massive black shadow just seemed to swallow the walls of the room as chairs and pictures started floating all around them. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the whole house. The family, absolutely terrified, just ran. They fled to a hotel, but the activity followed them there. When they finally came back, their home had been completely vandalized, with these crude, awful words scrawled all over the walls. Okay, so the situation is beyond out of control. They're terrified for their lives. So they make a desperate call to the most famous paranormal investigators on the planet, Ed and Lorraine Warren. And you know, the second the Warrens walked through that door, they knew this was the real deal. Ed's first words were that the atmosphere was just suffocating. He did a simple test right away. He knocked twice on a wall, and immediately 2 sharp knocks came right back from inside it. This wasn't just random noise. Something was communicating. And Lorraine, being the gifted clairvoyant she was, she saw it. Near Patty's bedroom, she had this vision of a huge floating black shadow with these glowing red eyes. She said she felt this overwhelming weakness just looking at it, like her own life energy was being drained right out of her. The second Ed walked into the room, it vanished. But the message was crystal clear. They were dealing with something powerful and incredibly evil. So the Warrens get to work. They start their cleansing rituals, saying prayers, but this thing, it fought back, and it fought back hard. As they prayed, that knocking in the walls just became deafening. The candles they lit were snuffed out by a breath they couldn't see. Instead of backing down, the entity just ramped up its attacks. And then it got physical. This wasn't just noises and smells anymore. One night, Mrs. Donovan woke up gasping for air, feeling an invisible hand wrapped tight around her throat, choking her. When they flipped on the lights, her family found these deep, red scratches all across her chest. This had gone way beyond a simple haunting. That physical attack? That was all the proof the Warrens needed. It confirmed their absolute worst fear. This wasn't some lost human spirit. Their diagnosis was so much worse, a demonic infestation. See, they weren't dealing with a ghost. They were dealing with a non-human, purely evil entity whose only goal was to terrorize, possess, and ultimately destroy this entire family. And that's when Lorraine just puts it all together. She realizes this thing isn't tied to the house, it's tied to the family. That's why it followed them to the hotel. She said this spirit didn't come with the house, it was invited. And right then, a terrified Patty finally broke down and confessed everything about the Ouija board and her so-called spiritual boyfriend. The Warrens knew the horrifying truth. The spirit was a liar. It was a demon that had preyed on a lonely girl just to get a foothold in our world. At this point, there's only one move left to make, a formal exorcism. The second the priests began the ritual, the house just exploded into chaos. The temperature in the room dropped to freezing. The walls started to shake so violently, it felt like an earthquake. Then, all at once, every single window in the house shattered. And right there, in the middle of the room, that black shadow with the glowing red eyes appeared right in front of all of them. And then that shadow, it just rushes right at Patty, straight into her body. Her eyes turned solid red. She started to levitate off the floor, screaming in what sounded like pure agony as the priest kept going with the rites. In one last violent act, she was thrown 5 feet across the room, slammed into a wall, and then just fell to the floor completely unconscious. And then, just silence. Complete and total silence. The shaking stopped, the cold was gone. That oppressive, heavy feeling that had choked the house, it was just gone. So after all that chaos, the house just went back to normal. The terrible knocking was gone for good. That foul sulfur smell had completely vanished. And when they turned on the taps, clear, clean water flowed out again. When Patty woke up, she was herself again. The exorcism had worked. The demonic entity had been cast out. But for the Donovan family, the ordeal, it was never really over. The physical signs were gone, sure, but the memory of that terror, of what they all endured, that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. So the Donovan case, it really is this terrifying lesson from one of the Warrens' most dangerous files. It really makes you ask a pretty chilling question, doesn't it? In our search for some kind of connection, what doors are we opening to the unknown? And are some of them better left shut for good?